So now once we know what Django signals actually are, let's go ahead and start implementing Django signals. So in order to start using Django signals, first of all, you need to go into your users app and you need to create a file which is called as signals.py. So let's just go ahead and create a new file and let's name this thing as signals.py. So once you have this file, you're good to go. And now here we will create a signal which is called as post save signal. So what the post save signal is going to do is that whenever this save method of this particular form is going to be executed, it's going to fire up that particular signal. And what that's going to do is that it's going to tell us whenever this particular form.save method is executed, which means that we will get a signal whenever the user is actually registered. And using that particular signal, we can know that when the user is registered, and depending upon that, we can go ahead and create the user profile. So now let's go ahead and first of all import the signal which is post save. So in order to import that, you type from django.db.models.signals import, that's going to be post save. So as you can see, there are other bunch of signals as well, which is post delete, post init and post migrate, which can be used for different purposes. So for now we will use post save because we want to get a signal when the user data is saved or when the user is actually registered. Okay, now once this thing is done, what we want to do is that whenever the user object is saved, we will get this signal, meaning that we also need to import the user model as well. So we'll go ahead and type in from django.contrib.auth. That's going to be models import. That's going to be the user model. So now once we import the user model, we are good to go. Now as we are sending the post_save signal, we also want to have a receiver which is going to receive those particular signals. Now in order to do that, we first need to go ahead and import a receiver. So we'll type in from django.dispatch, that's going to be import receiver. So what this receiver will do is that it will receive the send signal and it will perform some action, and in our case the action is nothing but it's to basically go ahead and create a profile for that particular user. So I hope you get the flow of this particular code. That is, first of all, we go ahead and we use a signal which is going to be fired up whenever we go ahead and register a user and the user registration process is complete. Then we go ahead and we use a receiver to receive that particular signal, and when the receiver receives that particular signal, we perform some action. Now once we go ahead and have the receiver as well, and when the receiver receives a particular signal, it's actually going to go ahead and create the profile. So we will also go ahead and import the profile model as well. So the profile model is actually present in the models.py file, which is this file right here. So as you can see, this is the profile model. So let's go ahead and import that over here. So let's go back to the signals.py file, which is this file right here, and let's go ahead and import that. So from .models import, that's going to be profile. Okay, so once this thing is done, now let's actually write in the code which will actually implement all of this functionality. So first of all, what we will do is that we'll write in a function to build a profile. So we'll type in def, let's say build_profile. So this is actually a method or a function which is going to build up our profile. So this is going to have multiple parameters over here. So first of all, we will have a sender over here, which is nothing but which sends the signal. So we'll type in sender, and then the next parameter which we have here is we have the instance. So instance here is nothing but it's the instance which is being saved. So in this case, the user which is being saved is nothing but the instance, which is this user right here. So what we do here is that we go ahead and have a form here, and whenever the user enters his credentials in the form, the user is saved in a particular instance, and that instance is nothing but this thing right here. So now once we have instance, we are also going to have a parameter here which is called as created, and this basically is going to hold a boolean value which is going to tell us if the user is created or not. So it basically holds the status of the user. If the user is created, it's going to say true. If the user is not created, it's going to say false. Okay, so now once we have this thing, let's go ahead and pass in the final parameter, which is quarks. So quarks is nothing but, it basically means keyword arguments. So if you have any additional arguments, keyword arguments which you want to pass here, you can go ahead and do that using quarks. Okay, so now let's go ahead and write in some code in here. So this build profile function is actually going to create the profile object for us. So that means if the user is actually registered, we want to go ahead and create a profile for that user. So what we do is that we make use of this variable, which is created. So we check if the user is created. So we type in if created, means that we want to go ahead and we want to create the profile object. So we type in profile.objects.create, and to this we are going to pass in this particular instance right here as user. So we'll type in user equals, that's going to be nothing but the instance. So now what this thing basically does is that it goes ahead and creates the profile object for us. Now once we have this function, that's all fine and good, but when exactly do we know that we want to fire or call this function? So we actually want to fire up this function when the user profile is created. But how exactly do we know that the user profile is created? We can know that by using this particular signal right here. So now we want to go ahead and receive this post_save signal, and upon receiving that signal, we actually want to execute this function. So how exactly can we do that? So we can do that by adding a receiver over here as a decorator to this particular function. So I can just go ahead and type in @receiver, and in here I will make this receiver receive the post_save signal. So I'll type in post_save, and we also need to name the sender for this signal as well. So the sender in this case is nothing but our user. So I'll type in user over here. So that means now this function is going to be called whenever it receives the post_save signal from the sender, who is user. So I hope that's clear to you. And now let's move on to the next part, which is to basically go ahead and save the profile. So now whenever you want to save the profile, you write another function here, which is nothing but def save_profile, and this is basically going to go ahead and save your profile. So it's again going to have the same parameter, which is the sender. It's going to have the instance, and then it's not going to have the created argument, but it's going to have the quarks here. So I'll type in quarks over here, and now let's go ahead and save the actual instance to the profile. So I'll type in instance.profile.save. So once that thing is done, we are pretty much good to go. Now this will actually save the profile, but this thing also needs to receive a signal. So I'll just go ahead and copy this receiver from here and paste it over here as well. And now once we go ahead and do that, we are pretty much good to go. Now the final thing which we need to do here is that we also need to go ahead and import the signals which we have used. So in order to do that, what we do is that we go to the apps.py file, and in this particular class, which is the user config, we simply add a configuration for user signals. So we type in def ready and just pass in the parameter as self, and in here we simply type in import users dot signals. So once we go ahead and do that, we are pretty much good to go. So once everything is done, just make sure to save your code, and let's make sure that your server is up and running. And now let's simply go ahead and see if our logic actually works. So now let me just go to the register page, and in here let's try to register a new user, and let's name this thing as sample user. Let's say the email is sample@gmail.com. Let's see, the password is test456 test456. So when I click on sign up, as you can see, the user is now signed up, and now let's try to log in. So the username is sample user, password is test test 456. So when I click on login, as you can see, now we are logged in. And now when I go to profile, as you can see, the profile of this particular user is now automatically created. So that means now we don't have to manually go ahead and create the profile for every registered user, but now the process of creating the profile for every registered user is now being automated. And that can be done by using Django signals, and the signal which we have used in this case was the post save signal. So the only thing which we have done here is that we have used the build profile function, that is, we have created a function which is just going to go ahead and create the profile object using the user instance, and then we have simply saved this particular profile using the profile instance. And we have just made use of the post underscore save signal over here. We have added a receiver over here to receive that signal, and whenever we actually receive that signal, we have just executed these two functions. So that's it for this lecture. Hopefully you guys were able to understand what are Django signals and how they can be useful in performing some sort of an action when some other action has already occurred. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.